you saying those things, it also makes me almost a different side tangent of wrestling is even our fellow healthcare practitioners and those even in the nutrition or functional medicine space or natural healthcare, on top of the typical regular allopathic and typical medical model. To me, unless you're type 1, and this is more me reflecting on my natural healthcare fellow practitioners, um, don't talk about type 1.
Yeah.
Like when I hear other practitioners talking about beta cell regeneration, or I hear them talking about like supplements or anything and everything else, it's like, this is, yes, those things have a role, but if you're not managing your insulin and your carbs and how you're doing anything and everything else, none of it matters.
Yeah.
And unless you're type 1, you have no idea of really how to comprehend any of this stuff. And this is part of why this podcast, because it's, unless you're a diabetic, you really don't know what these things feel like and act like. Yeah. And once I started talking to you about wrestling and type 1 diabetes, I was like, holy cow, like there's just so much different than I thought it was going through by myself, but no other person would have been able to coach me through that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No one would have been able to get through to you about it
Mm-hmm.
because it's just like, well, you don't know how it feels. So, and
That's
whether
part of it
it's
too.
legitimate advice or not, it's like, well, how much does this person really know what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't.
Yeah.
They don't know how it feels to be low. Well, they may know how it feels to be low, but definitely probably not high.
Mm-hmm.
And just the struggles of trying to control those lows and highs all the time. Um, and therefore it's just hard to relate.
I remember I had an endo in the interim. I forgot what I was happening. Maybe because I mean, it's always a weird time when you're a teenager because technically you're still pediatrics,
Yeah.
right? And
I was going
it's
to a pediatric endocrinologist till I was over 21 years old.
what?
Yeah.
Why? Oh, just because you didn't want to get a new one?
I'm just stubborn. I don't like change, so I just kept
Oh,
going to the same guy, and he just kept
fair enough.
taking me. So
And then he's like, and then you're sitting there with like dinosaur stool under your feet, and your endo goes probably something like, Grady, you should probably not be here.
yeah, literally, I think the last time, this is so funny. The last appointment I think I had with him. I mean, I'm like surrounded by kid stuff. There's cartoons on the TV. I'm sitting in the waiting room, and this is when I had my giant beard. I have this giant beard that's like seven
You were a
inches long.
heavyweight at the time too, right?
Yeah, I was a
Weren't you a
big
big
guy
dude?
too. Yeah.
A
So
260 or something like that?
yeah, so like yeah, I think at that point I had started losing weight, so I was probably I mean like 240, 26 or
A
230.
big guy. Anyways.
Yeah, so big. I had this huge beard,
Mm-hmm.
and I think at that point he's like, "Yeah, I think it's probably time we find a actual doctor."
You could be
Good
how many
one.
of these people's fathers?
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh man. But I remember being at the pediatrician endocrinologist, and I forgot, maybe we were transitioning, or maybe it was something with healthcare insurance, or I don't know why, but I had a new endocrinologist. She was trying to help me solve my blood sugar issues. And as a kid, part of it, what you said, no one can relate. So like, you don't want to listen to advice. Like, man, my parents, when I was a teenager, I wasn't a big rebellion in terms of just being a teenager. Like I listened to my parents, like I, followed curfew, all that kind of stuff. And when it came to my diabetes, I I flicked the middle finger and I was like, screw you, hardcore, to anyone trying to tell me otherwise.
Mm,
And so my blood sugar was all over the place all the time, not just during wrestling. And and I remember this endocrinologist was trying to help brainstorm, and it was very clear because wrestling is interesting that you really can't wrestle with a pump on,
yeah.
yeah, right, and because it should be at practice for anyone who's not a wrestler, which I would imagine majority of people aren't who are listening to this. You have your wrestling singlet, and
Mm,
the leotard, as some might call it, but that's really only for the meets and your
yeah.
actual matches. But then when you're wrestling in practice, it's kind of tighter fitting clothing or gym clothing or Under Armour or basketball shorts, but you don't want things flying around. Like
Yeah.
so you don't want things to grab onto. So most people, like, I never wrestle with my pump on, obviously, and this is like 2 hours, 2.5, 3 hours where you don't, or I don't have my pump on. And she was just trying so hard. She's like, "Well, can you bolus beforehand?" And I was like, "Well, no, I would drop low."
Yeah.
But you spike so high because both the time duration without insulin as well as the adrenaline and the cortisol, kind of like how we talk about sometimes with weightlifting, and the rebound effect with running that we've talked about before too. Once you start getting that stress response to that exercise, you're gonna get higher blood sugar too. And she just, for the life of her, couldn't figure out a way to uh, to help me through those times, and never we never at the time figured out a way, which I would now tell myself otherwise. There's some different strategies, but
Yeah.
I remember that being such a hard part of the practice portion for myself and blood sugar management, on top of the wrestling other BS stuff that was going on. um it was just like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.